Rain lashed down in sheets, plastering my hair to my face as I stood across the street, a useless umbrella dangling from my hand. The lights of the mansion glowed in the twilight, a warm inviting beacon that held a chill I could feel from 50 feet away. From this distance, the house looked like a movie set, a fantasy made real. But I knew it was just another house built of wood and glass and lies. Inside, a parade of movers hauled furniture, a constant stream of men in gray uniforms carrying priceless art and oversized crates that I'd never seen before. My sister-in-law Cressida floated between them, a wine glass in her hand, her laugh echoing off the manicured walls. I saw her glance my way, her smile turning brittle as her gaze landed on me. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. I watched her pull a manila envelope from her blazer pocket, her thumb running over the paper inside. I knew what it was. It was my eviction notice, a piece of paper that had been my death sentence. She'd laughed when she'd handed it to me 3 days ago, told me she had to do it, that the new life they were building didn't have room for a third person. I'd walked out of that house and into the rain without a word. What she didn't know was that a family heirloom I'd been wearing around my neck was worth more than her millions. And 3 days later she'd be on her knees, begging for it. Before I begin this story, can you tell me where in the world you're listening to from? The old house smelled of dust and daydreams, a faint, comforting scent that had been the backdrop to my entire life. I sat at the kitchen table, the wood scarred with decades of memories, tracing a small, intricate heart etched into its surface. It was a mark my brother, Holden, had carved when we were kids, and it felt like the only solid thing in my world right then. Holden was a good man, a hard-working man, but his wife Cressida was like a constant low-level hum of anxiety. She was never happy with what we had. Not the leaky roof, not the car that stalled out on cold mornings, not the dented fridge that hummed with a tired breath. She was always on his case about money, the way it was always an empty cup, no matter how much he poured into it. I lived in the small back room, saving every spare dollar I earned from my part-time job at the diner. My true hope lay in a small box I kept hidden under my bed, filled with vintage jewelry I'd inherited from my grandmother, Geneva. Each piece told a story, but the most cherished was a locket, a delicate, ornate thing that held no picture, only the memory of my grandmother's love. It was a tangible link to a past that felt so much simpler, a past where family felt whole and unbreakable. The day it all started was a Thursday. Holden came home from his late shift, his uniform stained with grease, a weary look in his eyes. He tossed a lottery ticket on the counter with a flourish, a half-hearted gesture of a joke that had been a running bit between us for years. "This one's the one, Jessa," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "This one's gonna fix everything." Cressida scoffed from the living room, her voice a sharp, dismissive edge. "Holden, you're throwing money away," she called out, not even bothering to look up from her phone. "That money could have paid for half the electric bill." We didn't respond. We were used to her complaints. The ticket lay there, a small slip of paper with a promise written in invisible ink, nestled among the day's mail. The next day was a quiet one, a heavy rain falling outside, and I spent the afternoon cleaning, trying to chase away the musty smell and the feeling of impending doom that had settled over the house. The utility shut-off notice had arrived a week before, a cruel reminder of how fragile our reality was. That evening, the local news report came on. The anchor's voice was bright and cheerful, a stark contrast to the gloom outside. A winning lottery ticket worth $31 million was sold at a convenience store on the corner of Maple and Main. My heart leaped into my throat. That was our corner. I ran to the kitchen, my eyes darting to the counter where the ticket had been. It was gone. Cressida walked into the room, a strange, secretive smile on her face. "What are you looking for?" she asked, her voice laced with a sweetness that didn't feel real. She held the ticket in her hand, the numbers matching the ones on the TV. Holden walked in, and she showed him. His mouth fell open. He grabbed her in a hug, spinning her around, a sound of pure joy escaping his lips. "We did it, Cressida. We're rich," he shouted. But she just watched him, a cold, calculating look in her eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. The next few days were a blur of promises and plans. Cressida was suddenly a whirlwind of activity, talking about new homes, expensive vacations, designer clothes. She talked about it all as if I wasn't even in the room, her words painting a vivid picture of a future I wasn't a part of. Holden was oblivious, lost in the giddy excitement of it all. "We're a team, Jessa," he'd said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "We'll take care of you. We'll get you a place of your own." But he didn't see the way Cressida's face would harden when he said it, the way she would subtly shift her body between us, a silent wall. She started leaving designer catalogs out, open to pictures of homes and cars, but she never once asked me what I wanted. She spoke about our family in a way that felt like it only included her and Holden. It was a subtle betrayal, a slow and agonizing burn. The morning they were to go claim the prize, a limo pulled up outside the house. It was a gaudy white thing that looked completely out of place on our street. Cressida walked into my room, her posture stiff, her face devoid of any emotion. "You have to go," she said, her voice flat. "Holden and I have talked about it. It's better for all of us if you get your own place. We'll give you a check later for a deposit." My jaw dropped. I looked at her, searching for the sister-in-law I had once known, the woman who had shared stories with me over coffee. But she was gone. "What about what Holden said?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She scoffed. "Holden's being sentimental. This is a business decision. You're a liability." I looked at her, my world collapsing. I went to Holden, my brother, the man who had promised to always protect me. He was standing by the window, a hopeful look on his face as he watched the limo. "She's right, Jessa," he said, his voice quiet. "We need to do this. We'll give you money. You'll be fine." He was choosing her over me. Heartbroken, I started to pack. I filled a cardboard box with my clothes, my few belongings. I felt numb. As I was about to leave, I saw a crumpled piece of paper on the floor, tucked behind a cabinet. I picked it up. It was a lottery ticket, a different one. The numbers were different, and the barcode was faded. My blood ran cold. The ticket in Cressida's hand, the one she showed Holden, wasn't the one he had bought. It was a fake. She had lied. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She had created this whole scenario, this whole cruel charade to get rid of me. She had never won anything. As I stared at the ticket, the limo doors slammed shut outside, the engine humming to life. I've never known a loneliness quite like the one that settled over me the next few days. I was a ghost, drifting between my friend's cramped apartment and the empty streets, my mind replaying the scene with Cressida over and over. I tried to call Holden, to tell him what I'd found, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I texted him but got no reply. It was like they had vanished. My life, which had already been teetering on a fragile ledge, had now been pushed off completely. I worked my dead-end job, serving coffee to strangers who were too busy staring at their phones to notice my shaking hands. The locket around my neck felt like a physical weight, a reminder of a home and a person I had lost. It was a constant presence, a silent witness to my downfall. It felt wrong to wear it now, a reminder of a happier past that was forever out of reach. A few days later, I was on my lunch break, scrolling through my phone, when a local news alert popped up. My stomach twisted as I clicked on it. The headline read, "Local couple wins $31 million lottery." The screen showed a picture of Holden and Cressida, standing side by side, holding a giant check. They were smiling, their teeth a perfect white against their beaming faces. My heart shattered. The ticket was a fake. She had lied to me, but she had gotten the money. A flood of emotions washed over me, betrayal, confusion, and a gnawing ache of loss. I saw Holden's face, and he looked so genuinely happy, so genuinely proud of her. He didn't know. He couldn't know. The thought of him living a lie, celebrating a betrayal, was a pain deeper than the one I felt for myself. He didn't deserve this. He deserved the truth. I got a call later that day. It was Holden. His voice was a panicked whisper, a frantic broken sound I had never heard before. "Jessa," he said, his voice catching. "I don't know what to do. I'm at the pawn shop." My heart dropped to my stomach. "Holden, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's Cressida," he said, the words spilling out in a farce. "She's been losing all the money, all of it. She gambled away almost $1 million in 3 days. I had no idea." She said she was being secretive to protect our privacy. I told him I'd be right there. I left work and ran to the pawn shop, my mind racing. When I got there, I found him, a broken man in the middle of a shop filled with broken dreams. He looked at me, his eyes full of tears. "I'm so sorry, Jessa," he said, his voice cracking. I should have never listened to her. She told me she had to get rid of you to start our new life. I believed her. I'm such an idiot. He was on the verge of tears. He told me he was trying to sell his watch, a gift from our dad, just to cover some of the new bills she'd run up. Just then the door of the pawn shop swung open, and Cressida rushed in, her face a mask of fury. She saw me and her eyes narrowed. What is she doing here? She spat, her voice venomous. Holden, I told you to stay away from her. She turned to me, her anger twisting into a desperate sort of panic. Her gaze fell on the locket around my neck. Her eyes went wide, and she let out a strangled gasp. She looked at the locket, then back at me, her face paling. The locket, she whispered, her eyes fixed on it. I need it. Give it to me now. She reached out, her fingers trembling, trying to snatch it. I pulled away, my heart pounding in my chest. What's wrong with you, Cressida? Holden said, grabbing her hand. What are you talking about? She began to sob. A theatrical, ugly sound. It's not about the lottery ticket, she screamed, her words slurring together. The lottery ticket was a fake. It was a lie. The real money, the real money, is in that locket. She was on the verge of hysterics, her body shaking with a desperate, unhinged energy. The pawnshop owner looked on, a confused expression on his face. Holden stared at her, his face pale, his mind struggling to comprehend what she was saying. The truth was out there in the open, a raw and ugly thing that had been festering under the surface. The locket from Grandma Geneva, she repeated, her voice a desperate plea. I needed to get the money back. The lottery was just a front. The locket, it's the key to everything. Cressida's confession hung in the air, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. Holden looked from her to me, his face a mixture of shock and utter disbelief. He had been so blind, so eager for a new life that he had missed all the signs, all the lies. The locket, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I looked down at the antique piece that had been a silent companion through my life. It was just a small piece of metal and a fragile chain, but she was saying it held the key to a fortune. I refused to hand it to her. She was a woman who had betrayed her family, her husband, and she was on her knees, crying, begging for something she had no right to. Please, Jessa, she sobbed, I can explain everything. I'll give you back the house. I'll give you $1 million. Just give me the locket. Her desperation was a tangible thing, a disgusting, greedy hunger that made my skin crawl. She had stolen everything from me, and now she was trying to steal the last piece of my grandmother that I had left. Holden finally snapped out of his daze. What are you talking about, Cressida? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. What is in that locket? She flinched, then started to speak in a rush, a frantic torrent of words as if getting them out would somehow make it all right. It wasn't a lottery ticket. The winner was never announced. The whole thing was a lie. I've been researching Jessa's grandmother for years. She was a secret antiquities dealer. She made an unbelievable fortune, but she never put it in a traditional bank. She created a network of hidden accounts and assets, all protected by a cryptographic key. She pointed a trembling finger at the locket. The key is in there. I was a research assistant for a private investigator hired to find it. He died, and I took his notes. The lottery was just a way to get Holden on board, to get rid of you so I could have the locket. The words hit me like a train. My grandmother, Geneva, had been a woman of secrets, a woman who had lived a double life and had built a legacy none of us knew about. And Cressida had been hunting it all this time, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I reached for the locket, my fingers fumbling with the clasp. I'd never tried to open it before. The clasp clicked, and the locket swung open. Inside, a tiny rolled-up piece of paper was tucked into a small crevice. I pulled it out and unrolled it. It was a series of numbers and letters, a dizzying jumble that meant nothing to me. But I knew it was the key to my grandmother's fortune. It was the truth, finally revealed. Cressida lunged forward, trying to grab the paper, but Holden pulled her back, his face a mask of revulsion. Get away from her, he growled, the betrayal in his voice so thick you could almost taste it. She fell to the floor, a broken, pathetic mess. We can share it, she pleaded, her voice breaking. We can be a family. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But her words rang hollow. Holden looked at me, and I could see the pain, the regret, and the love in his eyes. I knew what I had to do. You've already lost everything, Cressida, I said, my voice steady, no longer shaking. You lost the moment you decided to betray the only people who ever loved you. I took the paper, folded it, and placed it safely in my pocket. Holden and I walked out of the pawn shop, leaving her there alone with her lies and her greed. The next day, we met with a lawyer. We discovered that Cressida's lottery claim had been under investigation. She had forged the documents and had been using the illusion of wealth to live a lavish lifestyle, all while losing what little money they had to her old gambling addiction. She was arrested for fraud. Holden and I went to our old house, and he started to fix the leaky roof. He didn't want the money, not at first. He just wanted to go back to the way things were. But I knew we couldn't. My grandmother's legacy was more than a secret fortune. It was a second chance, a fresh start. A few weeks later, with the help of lawyers, we accessed my grandmother's fortune. It wasn't $31 million. It was far more. I looked at the locket, now on a new chain, my finger tracing the intricate design. It was no longer a symbol of loss, but of a bond that was tested and ultimately unbreakable. I was not a victim of betrayal anymore. I was a person who had found her own way, her own fortune and her own family. The wealth was a gift, but the true prize was the person I became.